Hi guys, Mrs. Clark here. Today we're going to focus on graphing fractions on a number line. We're going to start with graphing positive fractions and then we're going to move to graphing negative fractions. Now, you may say, well, Mrs. Clark, we've already done this. You did this earlier in the week with us, but those were benchmark fractions. We're going to focus on some other fractions that are not necessarily benchmark easy fractions where you're basically cutting the space between 0 and 1.5 and things like that. Okay, so we'll start with 2/3. Okay, you know from looking at this that 2/3 is a positive fraction and that 2/3 is between 0 and 1/2. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put 0 all the way to the left of my number line so that I can focus more on seeing in the middle of my graph what I am graphing. Okay, so I've got 0 and then +1 on the right. Okay. Now, when you're graphing fractions, okay, always look to see, is the fraction in simplest form? Well, I can't make 2/3 any smaller, so I'm basically going to be graphing 2/3. Now, the other thing is, use the denominator to tell you how many sections you are going to need to divide up the space between 0 and 1 into. Well, the denominator is 3, so technically I need 3 sections. Now, we've been working on this. When you need 3 sections, you need to draw one less line to divide up the space. So instead of 3 lines that I'm going to draw, I'm drawing 2. Because remember, let's look at this. This is 1/3, this is 2/3, and the whole number 1 is 3/3, which is the same as 1/2. Okay? So we need to now graph 2/3. That fraction is not graphed unless we put that obnoxious point on the mark that is labeled or that is indicating 2/3. And we also have to write that fraction down that we're graphing. So if this is 1/3 and this is 2/3, then we're putting our obnoxious point right here and we're writing 2/3 underneath it. So there is one fraction graphed on a number line. Let's go to the second one. Let's go to 3/10. Okay, now 3/10 is a positive fraction. So again, we are setting up our graph the same way. We're working on the right side of 0 and we're not putting down anything that's bigger than 1/2 because a fraction is an amount less than 1/2. A mixed number is a different story because a mixed number has a whole number part plus a fraction included. So they can fall in between other whole numbers, okay, but not just a fraction. So if I've got 3/10, all right, I know I'm between 0 and 1, and I look at the tenths, and that tells me I need 10 sections, which means I need, what did you say? That means 9 lines, Mrs. Clark. You are correct. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And boy, do I love it when I divide up the space and it looks like it's pretty even. And that's how that actually came out. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I have to extend my number line a little bit more further to fit things. That's why using pencil helps. So I'm at the point now where I need to see where 3/10 is going to fall. Well, you know that you need to start your graph at 0. Okay, you need to start your counting at 0. So I go to 0 and I am counting and I'm going to graph 3/10. So I'm going to count. This is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10 right here. And again, write the fraction, write it out, make that obnoxious point. Okay, now we're going to change this up a little bit and we're going to focus on the fact that this is a negative fraction. You've got -4/5. Well, how does that look different than a positive fraction? We are going to be working on the left side of 0 now. So when I make my graph this time, I'm not going to put 0 over here all the way on the left. I'm going to put 0 over here. And then on all the way to the left on this graph, I'm going to put -1. And my graph of -4/5 is going to fall somewhere in there. Okay. Now, if you look at the denominator of 4/5, first of all, I look and check, can it be simplified? No, it cannot. I look and I see the denominator of 5, which tells me I am going to need 5 sections, which means I'm putting 4 lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, because as we went over up above, The -1 is the same as -5/5. Same thing. So if my job is to graph -4/5, starting at 0, I'm counting 4 spaces to the left, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and I'm marking it, obnoxious point, and labeling -4/5. Okay? Next one. And I'm gonna rewrite it because it's awfully close to the numbers up above, and I want to make sure you can see it well enough. This fraction's a little bit different, okay? Yes, it's a negative, but what you might notice that it is not in simplest form. So trust me when I tell you, you don't want to be drawing 14 lines here to give you 15 sections. You don't want to do it. You want to simplify the fractions if you can, because it means less lines that you have to draw. Okay, so when I look at this fraction, I see that I can divide top numerator and bottom denominator by 5. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to show what I'm doing. I'm showing what I'm doing. So if I take 5 and I divide it by 5, I get, what did you say? 1. If I take 15 and I divide it by 5, what did you say? You get 3. You are correct. Okay, now, don't forget, this is a negative. I can tell you a common mistake that students make is they get caught up in simplifying and they forget this is a negative. And if they get distracted, they start graphing a positive on the number line. And unfortunately, that's not what I asked you to graph. I wanted you to graph the negative, okay? So now we're going to graph this. We are going to be between 0 and -1. And isn't it nice that we're not drawing 14 lines, giving us 15 sections? Look at this. We're only drawing 2 lines to give us 3 sections. That's amazing. There we go. Now, if I'm going to graph it, remember I start here. I am graphing 1/3. So this is 1/3. This is 2/3. That's 3/3. This is -1/3. This is -2/3. That's -3/3. I am graphing the -1/3. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is write the original fraction with this. Yes, it simplifies down, but the original form of the number was this. And I'd like you to write it so that I know that you are making the connection between, hey, these 2 things right here, they represent the same amount. They are the same thing. Okay? So that's the lesson for today. We're going to do some work practicing this. And then we're going to get to the point where, depending on how well this goes, and I know it's going to go fabulous, but what I want to do is start putting more than one fraction on the same number line. So graphing 2 fractions on the same number line, or even maybe more. That's what's coming next. I hope this helps.